Okay. Let's see how much of this we can get through. Definitely, at least the artifacts. There's fewer multicolor cards, and there's the same number of lands, but obviously there are a bunch of cycles. If I can get through all the individual card choices, then the only thing left over are looking at some of the deck pictures, and talking about like possible future changes. So smallest number is this video and one more, and then largest is like four more videos, including this one maybe. Okay, artifacts. Um, Artifacts is like really hard because um, you're trying to stitch together a lot of weird combo decks. So you're trying to get things that are like work well but not too well, I guess. Um, like ideally, most of the colorless cards are cards that like slot into multiple strategies but aren't like all first pickable or something. And with that, excavated wall. It's a defender, so it works with the defender sub theme. It has mill, so that working with, as we'll see, the misfail planes or junk troller, a few cards over here that you can like end up in a situation where you're casting the same cards over and over again, or you're choosing what you draw. Um, I also was like trying to keep an eye on trinket artifacts because Ariok Salvagers is in there. That is one of the reasons why Mirror Scrappling isn't here. So that if you get Salvager's LED going, that like you get infinite mana, and the thing that you use that for is Salvager's Mirror Scrappling. That's like very funny to me. As like a possible infinite. Also is another thing that works with all will be one. Is not incredibly well, but it does work. But just an example of like a very trinkety artifact that you could end up casting infinite times in various ways. Junk Troller, useful as like an anti-decking maneuver, and also useful because I have Tunnel Vision. Tunnel Vision Junk Troller, the original Ravnica combo classic, returns again. Also useful even beyond just like when you are in those deterministic game states where you are putting a card on the bottom that's also the top. Uh, has like a very slow way of putting something back in your deck so you can tutor for it again, etc. Just really, really useful. And also a defender. Speaking of also a defender, I'm hoping that Shield Wall Sentinel ends up in like in people's decks. Like that it is rarely in a sideboard because there are so many cards that are incidentally creatures with defender. And so having a 4 mana 1/3 that tutors for possibly part of a combo piece, or is just like a 4 mana 1/3 that draws a card, and that like even if you're just tutoring for like a Wall of Blossoms, it's like the world's slowest draw card. That might be good enough. I'd be pretty surprised if Shield Wall Sentinel was ever in someone's sideboard. It's just like very, very good incidental value, if not combo potential. Also, if there's someone who builds like the Defender's deck, being able to tutor up your like Axebane Guardian, for example, even if that's not like strictly speaking a combo piece. Stuffy Doll, a few ways like Pariah and Guilty Conscience is the infinite combo. Pariah is just the like prevent damage combo. Surprisingly, not a defender creature. I also think this and the next card are some of the best. Again, in the like short list of good Tinker targets, which is man 5 mana 01 indestructible being one of the best Tinker targets is just like really lovely to me. Possibly the actual best Tinker target is Clockwork Dragon. How about a 6/6 flyer for 7 that keeps getting smaller unless you keep paying 3 mana? 6/6 flyer for 5. Good Tinker target. Good Dragonstorm target. The fact that you can just like play this as a 6/6 and then when it attacks, it loses a counter, but you can probably pay 6 to put 2 counters on it so that it's like hitting for 7 in the air. It's just really scary. It is also a way to spend infinite colorless mana, or like infinite mana of any color, but especially if you are making mana that can only be spent on abilities, conceivably. There is at least one infinite combo that produces infinite mana that can only be spent on abilities. Clockwork Dragon is one of the ways to spend that mana. So yeah, it's just like it is like the second best at a bunch of things. It's exactly the kind of card that I want in this cube. Lion's Eye Diamond, iconic combo card. Works with salvagers, probably works with a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of like ways to, cast cards with flashback, use abilities. Yeah, just like a quintessential combo card. And in general, I like that it does things like with salvagers, you need like a third thing to work, and that there are like a lot of weird angled things to make that happen. Altar of the Brood. Altar of the Brood is like a little bit scary as like, for example, a way that Lion's Eye Diamond and Ariok Salvagers could kill someone, where you make infinite mana and it doesn't matter. The thing you're using it for is to play Lion's Eye Diamond infinite times and deck them with Altar of the Brood. It is like up there in terms of like ways to kill someone with a combo that doesn't use the combat step. So like, I'm glad that it exists for that. And then it has sort of the downside of preventing yourself from decking might be a thing that you already have in play or in your hand or whatever. So yeah, so far it has not been too powerful. It's been powerful, but not too powerful. Also, being like a nice trinkety artifact is a plus, not just for salvagers, but possibly, for salvagers. Avarice Totem. I have most of the cards in here that let you use your opponent's pieces to do things. If there's one thing I dislike about Avarice Totem, is the like 10 mana double swap, where you like Avarice Totem swap with your own basic land, and then with that on the stack, Avarice Totem, and exchange that with something of theirs, so that if they don't have 5 mana in between those two things, you end up with Avarice Totem and the thing of theirs, and they end up with a basic land of yours or whatever, or something you don't care about. That's like complicated in a way I don't love, but it is really nice that this lets any color for 6 mana, if they need to like dismantle a combo of some kind, like that involves multiple lock pieces, as long as they can get the Avarice Totem into play, that they can just like always have that at the ready. I think that's really good. I have absolutely sideboarded into Lost in the Woods and then didn't realize that this deck that otherwise couldn't interact with my Lost in the Woods had an Avarice Totem, and they just waited until they had lethal in play, and then Avarice Totem Lost in the Woods, and we kept getting in a fight mana wise, whether I would have enough to Avarice Totem twice for every time they Avarice Totemed. Codex Shredder. Again, good for the like, little eggs type deck. Good for the, as you'll see, I have Lantern of Insight in here, so you could build like a miniature Lantern control with some of these mill effects that can hit you and or your opponent. There are some ways that you can go infinite with Codex Shredder, where you're making 5 mana with a thing and then getting it back, or more than 5, I guess more than 6 mana. Haven't looked into them since I add this in here, but I know they exist. Elixir of Immortality. I've absolutely seen a deck that like gains infinite life with this, where they can like keep tutoring for their elixir, putting it into play, gaining 5, putting it back into their deck, etc., etc. But also just as a like pretty simple, low cost, low impact way of not decking. Fountain of Renewal, a little trinket that expensively draws a card, which means that if you have like infinite mana, like this is one of those cards that like is like the maybe not the second best at a bunch of things, but like the third best, where it like it gains life every turn. So if you can take infinite turns, you gain infinite life. Or if you have a thing that triggers off of life gain, you can get a free trigger every upkeep. Or if you have salvagers, you could have this as your like quote unquote win condition, insofar as you can use this to draw your deck once you have infinite mana off of salvagers, and then hopefully you have a way to actually win or whatever. So yeah, this is like second or third best at a bunch of little things. Inscribed Tablet, being able to put like grab a land from the top of your deck, and then if you don't grab a land to draw a card, yeah, just a really versatile little trinket. Lamp of Insight, you know, there are enough things that you can build a kind of like manipulate the top of each player's deck kind of deck. Probably I think there are enough pieces and they're like low power enough. I don't think I've seen anyone put that together, but I do think it is possible. Magma Mine is the funniest way to win with infinite mana. The many ways that you make infinite mana, it is also an activated ability to put a pressure counter on it. So if you have a way to make infinite mana that only makes mana for abilities, this like works really well with that. This also lets you deal damage to any target. So if you have like a lot of things going, like salvagers for example, you can use that to like kill creatures over and over again and then eventually kill the opponent. I've also just seen this plus mana flare effects to just like slowly tick Magma Mine up to a number that matters to get rid of like a creature that is preventing them from doing something. Very in keeping with the like powerful engine, low power win condition type of thing. Skeleton Key, I've talked a little bit about Skulk as like being kind of a funny evasion ability. Adding loot, like Skulk and loot to a creature is like just fine. It's not like incredibly powerful. This is like maybe some of these like equipment that are, this one in particular is like, is it pulling its weight? I'm not sure if it is. I certainly like it less than the Dream Thief bandana that we'll get to in 2 cards. Urn of Godfire, I think it's useful for a lot of decks that they can like wash mana inefficiently in some way. And also this can destroy any creature or any enchantment regardless of the cost. I think this card is like way underrated. I think paying 1 mana and then 6 mana to destroy a 4+ cost enchantment or creature is like really underrated. Dream Thief's bandana, yeah, I just really like the like steal your opponent's cards and win with them. These like Gonti-esque effects. Obviously Gonti himself is like way too powerful just like rate wise for this cube. I like that black has a lot of the like steal cards from your opponent and win with them, and that like black has, I think, the most evasion in the cube. So this like works with that. Whether people think that's worthwhile is like still up in the air. I think a lot of these equipment are like very underutilized, including Illusionist Bracers, which has many of the many of the like untapped creatures. Any untapped creature that can untap itself works with illusionist bracers to give you infinite untaps uh, of a thing. Isochron Scepter. I knew I wanted Isochron Scepter and Panoptic Mirror, is it? Yeah. Yeah, just like very, very neat sets of combos. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything in mind for Isochron Scepter now. But yeah, just like exactly the kind of like, if not combo piece, like lock piece. I could imagine putting, what is it, False Life on this, to just be able to like do that against an opponent that's gaining life or something. I really like that Muddle the Mixtures in this cube because you can use it to tutor for Isochron Scepter, and it's a pretty good thing to put on Isochron Scepter if you already have both. Key to the City. Again, this has like a lot of little useful trinket text. It has card draw to help dig you through your deck. It allows you to discard cards for value with a lot of all the squee ways that let you get value. And then it makes a creature unblockable, which lets you get through either, for chip damage or something that has something like a Dream Thief's bandana or some other trigger when it hits. Allows you to have something unblockable guaranteed for hatred, etc. Again, just like a really good glue card. Shrine of Piercing Vision. I really like this shrine. Obviously, more powerful impulse if you're playing it in a base blue deck. I think might be okay, depending on what kind of combos your deck has, to just play in a deck that doesn't run blue. Temporal Aperture. I have seen this with World Gorger Dragon and Dance of the Dead to cast every spell in someone's deck for free. That's very fun. Otherwise, it's just vibes. It's just the right vibe for this cube that like you're just like tapping the top of your deck and hoping a powerful card comes off of it. Yeah. Winter Orb. There are some of these. There's Winter Orb and Static Orb, with some cards that let you like tap them or return them to your hand or whatever to try to break serve. And even if you don't do that, the fact that you know they're coming can put you in positions where you're like locking out your opponent. One of my goals in terms of like how slow some of these decks can win is so that cards like Winter Orb, I actually like playing under Winter Orb. I am one of the sickos that is a thing that I enjoy, is the like, okay, should I cast this 2-mana impulse effect to try to find the thing that will kill Winter Orb for good, or should I be leaving up my 2 mana so that I can eventually build up to 4 mana and play like a creature? And like most of the time, those decisions don't matter if your opponent plays Winter Orb and has like a bunch of threats in play. And it's actually hard to get a bunch of unblockable, or unblocked at least, threats in this cube in a way where even if you have your opponent under Winter Orb, you might be chipping in for 2 damage a turn or something, and that gives them a lot of time to get out from under it. I like that. Ashnod's Altar. I think the free creature sack outlets, especially ones like this that give you a benefit, are maybe not underrated, but like they are very powerful. Basalt Monolith, just like a nice combo card. I'm trying to think of like what does it have anything that works with the fact that that you can tap and untap it infinite times. I can't think of anything. I know Mesmeric Orb was way too good for this cube, so that like didn't even make the first playtest. But yeah, just like a very obvious combo card. Oh, I guess with like Rings of Bright Hearth, there are various things like that that can. It's also a good target for like the double tap combos or double untap combos. in terms of making infinite colorless mana. Blasting Station, I think this is like might be one of the best cards. I think a colorless Goblin Bombardment is just really powerful. It's not literally that, but a lot of the ways where you will have infinite creatures to sack, you are also putting infinite creatures into play. So it is like going to be very similar to Goblin Bombardment in those worlds. Cloudstone Curio is one of the ways that you can do crazy stuff with, what is it? With Olorin. You can also do stuff with like Wirewood Symbiote and this. And there's probably a bunch of combos that I haven't thought of. It's just like very broad, which is something that I wanted. You can even use it to bounce lands back and forth. I haven't thought about if there's a good reason to do that, but it's good to know. Crucible works with all of those ways that like involve blanking the combat step, but keeping your like sacrificing lands to do it. Or if you're discarding a bunch of things that are lands and like getting them into play to like, yeah. Crucible is like in most versions of this cube because it is exactly that kind of like trinkety stitching together a bunch of possible things. Extraplanar Lens is probably the worst mana flare effect in the cube. I really like the weird imprint cards, if that wasn't obvious. It also has the benefit over a lot of them that it like can break serve better in terms of you can like be very specific about which land you are imprinting on it so that it doesn't help your opponent as much. And I would, after the Naya creature that does that, I wanted, oh, excuse me, I wanted another card that could possibly be a like non-symmetrical mana flare, even if it has the downside here of destroying one of your own lands, basically. Mimic Vat, just a really versatile card, plays into the like stealing your opponent's creatures to help you your combos. I think there are just like a lot of really good cards you can put in Mimic Vat. I think Mimic Vat is kind of an all-star in slow, clunky cubes with a lot of like weird creature interactions. Phyrexian Altar is sometimes the better of the altars if you need the weird colors. I think most of the time it is going to be a worse Ashnod's Altar, but Gravecrawler, for example, needs black mana, not colorless mana, to cycle in and out of play a lot. Rings of Brighthearth, untapping, not Mana Vault, untapping Basalt Monolith is like the obvious one, but I think there are a ton. I think there are a ton of things like combos and then things that are not outright win the game combos, but like things that allow you to get ahead with Rings of Brighthearth. Static Orb is the other orb lock piece. That is like in some ways more punishing, and in some ways less punishing. Yeah, really fun stuff playing under these lock piece orbs, I think. Grinning Totem. Grinning Totem as like the original steal something from your opponent and then win the game with it. Really excited for Grinning Totem to be in here. Helm of Obedience was at least partly that, partly the like Helm Rest in Peace combo. In terms of, especially if I remove Rest in Peace, there's not really any version of Helm combo that works with an acceptable card. Like it's not like Black Leyline is any better than Rest in Peace in terms of being surprisingly incredibly hateful against decks that incidentally use the graveyard. So Helm of Obedience might be leaving, because it's like, if it were a slightly better Grinning Totem effect in the worlds where you don't go infinite and kill your opponent with it, I would probably keep it in. Navinriel's Disc. I like that there is a way that you can put into play ahead of time that can get you out from under locks, but also that if you draw it and you are like in a bad situation that you need to wait a turn, that your opponent knows to not like keep playing the board or has to like navigate that. Yeah, I like that it takes a whole turn if your opponent has like locking you out of various places in the game other than casting spells, that it will take you a whole turn cycle before you can get unlocked. Portcullis. I think there are probably some weird combos. Otherwise, this is mostly just like an additional lock piece where if a lot of these combos involve at least one creature, and so setting up so that your two creatures are the only ones in play, and then all other creatures just get their enters the battlefield effects and then get trapped under the portcullis as long as it's in play is like, yeah, I think this is like compelling counterplay for some definition of compelling counterplay. Trading post. I don't think there's a way to go infinite with trading post, but I think it is like, again, it is like a useful stitch together of a bunch of components where like when you're not winning the game, you're at least like doing things, advancing your game plan, finding more cards, etc., with trading post. Ubamask. I can't remember the name of the card that this in Knowledge Pool, the white creature that makes it so that your opponent can't play cards from anywhere except for their hand, so that they get locked out with Ubamask and Knowledge Pool. Also just like really generally useful as a like in terms of your opponent drawing a bunch of cards that they probably can't cast all in the same turn. I think Ubamask is like, yeah, can be generally helpful in that way. Where both of you are playing like a bunch of expensive spells, and so since Ubamask is coming, your opponent might end up in a situation where they are losing cards to Ubamask because they can't cast cards out of their hand quickly enough. Mirari obviously works really well with the cast big instants and sorceries a few times to win the game, quote unquote beatdown deck. I haven't thought through if there are any infinites with it. I don't think so. I think it is just like a good value card, and there are enough instants and sorceries that make things happen that like having a slightly clunky kicker 3 to copy them all is probably going to be good enough in a lot of situations. Panoptic Mirror. Love it. Very funny with Teferi's Protection. Is it Teferi's Protection in here? Yeah. That like you just tell your opponent like you can't interact with me except during my upkeep for the rest of the game. It's like very fun. I also just like a cube slow enough to use Panoptic Mirror the way it is like used in Limited, like in original Mirrodin Limited, of like you put a toolbox worth of different things under here and every upkeep you decide which of those spells to cast for free. I like that kind of gameplay. It's like a little repetitive, and like I understand why Wizards has like moved away from that, but I don't know. We have Static Orb and Winter Orb in this cube. What's casting the same spell over and over again with Panoptic Mirror? Thought Prison is a recent addition, and is the only unrestricted discard spell, I believe, like coercion effect, and it incidentally has some hate in terms of like the color or mana cost of the mana value of the imprinted card, and like stops infinites based on that. And that is like a nice like beat down kind of addition, but mostly it was that like if I was going to add a coercion effect, that I want people to be able to play with their toys, so it needed to cost more than 3. Knowledge Pool has the like lockout with that one white creature, and is also just like a nifty card in the we are mixing our cards from our decks together in hopes that like I will win the game with your cards before you win the game with mine. Just like playing a fair Knowledge Pool. is like kind of neat. And the last colorless card is Sentinel Dispatch. I think I've talked about Sentinel Dispatch some. Conspiracies are crazy powerful. The downsides of having conspiracies in any cube is that some people don't know they're crazy powerful because they're just like a free card in your opening hand all the time. This one creates a 1/1 artifact. It creates a defender. So it's like working with a bunch of little themes. I think this would be too powerful in a lot of cubes because of how incredible it would be against aggressive decks. You know, if your opponent's playing like a Jackal Pup deck and you get to start with a 1/1 defender every game, it like really stifles a lot of aggressive draws. But there aren't a lot of like that kind of aggressive draws in this cube, so I think it's just fine. Like the only downside is that like I've seen it go later than it probably quote unquote should, as like a free card every game, but it is unlikely to be like the game swinger in the way that like starting with a 1/1 defender against, you know, a deck full of 2/1 beatdown creatures would be. I think I'm actually going to call it there and just go to like a Crack-a-Pack. That took long enough. And then maybe I'll do multicolor and lands in the sort of like the video after this. Alright. What do we got here? I like Merchant of the Veil. I like Ash Barons. I like Pinnacle Monk. And I like Recurring Nightmare. Yeah, I think this is probably between, are you going to like plant a flag and draft Recurring Nightmare and be like, I'm going to find things that work great with Recurring Nightmare? Or do I take something like Pinnacle Monk or Ash Barons or Merchant of the Veil that has like a little bit more openness, especially Ash Barons, in terms of like it will probably make my deck, but I'm not drawing a line in the sand immediately in my first pick. If I look beyond those four, Twisted Landscape is like okay. I don't know if I would want to plant a flag using Open the Vaults. Like I might want something like Smorari's Wake Crazy, maybe. But I think those four are like the things I'm most interested in. Oh, excuse me. All right, it's definitely time to go to bed. Based on that, and I'll upload this at some point in the future. That is all of the artifacts and colorless cards.